guns, when guns were first invented, they called them the great equalizer. Who were they good for? Who were they bad for?
Well, this is one of these places where I have changed my perspective. I long believed the Second Amendment was the greatest error in our Constitution. I no longer believe that, and that doesn't mean that I look past all of the terrible, unnecessary carnage that arises because guns are easily available. But I'm watching tyranny erupt in places that I never would have expected it. And I am wondering if the founders did not very wisely understand that this day would come and that it will be very hard for tyrants to succeed in America if the populace is armed. So again, I know people will hear something in that I'm not saying. The cost of having these weapons commonly available is huge and, frankly, completely unacceptable to me.
Really? So the cost. So you went from pro-Second Amendment to now saying it would be better if we didn't have guns.
No. The other way.
Okay, got it. So now the benefit of having it is good versus not having it.
Even though I appreciate the tremendous unnecessary cost of these weapons being common, right? Even though I see that cost, I believe nothing will be more destructive than if tyranny, we've already seen lots of hints of tyranny in recent times in the U.S., but if tyranny takes over our nation and the West, we are in even more serious trouble. So I believe the harms that do come from these weapons being common will be dwarfed by the harms of things like what we saw in the 20th century in the Soviet Union, for example.
So let's go back to the question.
Right now in Iran.
So let's go back to the question. So the invention of gun, the great equalizer, who did it hurt? Who did it benefit?
I think I don't want to pretend to be an expert on that question. It would take me a lot of thought to get to an answer I believe.
This is what happens when you ask a former professor of evolutionary biology.
Very rarely do I have an answer more than a evolutionary biology scientist, okay? But who did it hurt and who did it benefit? I think who it hurt the most were bullies, right? People that could just strong arm you physically or in any capacity. And who did it help? It helped weaker people. Sometimes you might say the weaker sex. It helped women. I think at the end of the day, if there's two very strong people, a man and a woman, or a weaker man and a very strong man, and all of a sudden the weaker person has a gun, essentially that's the great equalizer. So I think it hurt bullies the most. And if you extrapolate that to governments and you take a look at, bully governments, whether it's Iran today with the mullahs, whether it's in Venezuela where you can't have a gun, or any place where the society or the civilization or the people don't have a weapon to defend themselves, you're going to be at the whim of tyrannical governments and bullies. So to answer your question, I think it helped weaker people defend themselves.
All right, but I want to push back slightly.
No, I'm way smarter than you, and I have. Please tell me why I'm wrong.
I believe your argument is correct as far as it goes, and the question is it correct in the end? Right? You can take that same argument and you could apply it to nuclear weapons. And you could say, actually, what we want to do is have every country be armed with nuclear weapons, because then big countries won't bully small countries. If you did that, the nuclear war that we will ultimately face will be that much sooner, right? Because you have that many itchy trigger fingers that could initiate the thing. And so I'm not convinced that look, we saw that nuclear weapons did produce peace. It worked. But in the end, is that their net effect? We can't measure that because we're not at the end. So I don't know what the net effect of guns is. I do believe the effect you're describing is real and important.
The only caveat that I would say, I can't believe I'm pushing back on you right now, is that the capacity for these nuclear weapons in the wrong hands could literally end Earth as we know it. Mm-hmm. Whereas a gun or an M16, yes, there could be some carnage, but you're not literally blowing up the world. So nuclear weapons, to a certain extent, is that threshold where it's like, don't cross that line.
Brett, you can't let a Playboy argue with you. This guy's his resume. It's not. You're a former professor of evolutionary biology. He's a form of an evolutionary biology. There is biology there, but it's different kind of life science.
Nightlife scene. It's a different education.
Let's go through that. So guns, specific guns, not nuclear. Guns benefited, the average person's like, listen, that guy's been bullying the city. This time he comes around, hey, you can't do this anymore. You got to get out of my house. Okay, shit, I'm not messing with that family. I'm out because they got a gun. Fantastic, right? It's like when you got the sign in the backyard, beware. There's a pit bull, a German Shepherd, and beware, and there is no dog. But that sign itself gets some people to say, I don't want to mess with that place. And there's a study showing that there's a percentage of people that don't mess with a house that just has that sign. Whether there's a real dog or not, it still helps you to create some safety. Nuclear, fine. Internet, a lot of people were worried about internet at the beginning. You have radio, you have TV, you have all this stuff, right? Who did YouTube scare? Who did Anchor or Spotify benefit and hurt? If we think about who YouTube and Spotify and these places hurt, it hurt mainstream media. It scared the crap out of the bullies that have been telling everybody one side of the story. Now you got to sit there and listen to the number one podcast in the world, Joe Rogan, telling you a different way because he's got a guest that got you thinking. Now we're going out there doing research, going to Google, which at one point we were concerned.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.